What's up, guys, and welcome back to another Revit tools video. This is going to be part 2 of model groups, where I go into greater detail of what they are, an example of what I might do to use model groups effectively, as well as I'll cover loading them in, loading groups into a Revit project right here. If I go to model group, I can say load as a group into open projects. You could actually take a full Revit project and load it into this one as a model group. So that's pretty cool. And as well as working with links, you can turn a model group into a link. So let's get right into it. I'm going to first cover a couple of different ways that I would use model elements and turn them into a group, and why. So let's say if you watch my part 1, which I really recommend you watch part 1 of model groups, it covers the basics of what they are, where to use them, why they might have problems or break. Watch that first. The link will be in the description below for that. Once you watch that, come over here. And now what I want to start with is why and where I use groups the most. So from part 1, the thing to remember is model groups like to break, and they can break a lot. Those are typically due to hosting, where you have one part of the element that's hosted in a model group, not in the model group. So the host may not be in the group, and the element that's in the group is hosted as something not. It's a pain, it's a mess. Don't do that. As well as wall joins. Make sure you disassociate the joins of all the walls that go into every model group that are touching other walls, maybe that are outside. So the discrepancy between in a model group and outside needs to have more definitive lines. And you do that by disallowing the joining for all the walls that touch those other walls that aren't in model groups. All that to say, what I want to do in this video is to go over where I use model groups. And then from there, we can go over the other tools, the more advanced, different weird things that you might use model groups for. So I typically use them for floors. And I love it for floors because I can draw a floor plate just like this maybe. And maybe it's got a weird bump out here. I'll trim this together. And the reason I like to use it for floors, especially consistent floors going up, that's kind of the whole point of model groups, but I'm going to only have this one element in it. And I'm going to call this actually typical floor. And at this point, if I go to 3D, I have my floor right there. And what I want to do now is copy this model group up 2 different levels. And I'll align it to selected levels. I'll select all of these different levels. And now I've got these floor plates that are all the same group, called typical floor, all the way up. And now what I want to do maybe is go to level 2, do the same kind of thing. I'll go ahead and turn this underlay off to none so I don't see level 1 below it. Now I'll hide all of these. We'll go back to floor, and I'll just make this one a rectangle. I will accept, and again, create a group. I'll do even floors. And what I can do now is go back to 3D. I've got that on level 2. I'll hit copy, and I'll do align select levels, and I'll do 4, 6, 8, and 10. So just like that, I have all of these different floors, different floor plates, whatever they are, on every level. But there's only 2 to worry about. So I have these completely different floor plates between one and another, but they're only 2 instances, essentially. It's 2 different model groups. So if, for example, I know that this floor plate needs to push in a lot, I need to edit in all these different places, because it's a group, it's really easy. If they're consistent levels all the way up, or particular levels that are the same, that's exactly where I want to use model groups. Because it's just got one element in it. It's just the floor. I don't have to worry about anything else. It's just the floor. I don't have to worry about things breaking. There's nothing that's going to be associated or disassociated, lost or broken in the group, because it's just that single element. It's perfect for that. That's definitely a reason why I might want to use model groups, is to use them for consistent floors that go all the way up. So I'm going to get rid of these. I will just leave us this last floor here at the bottom. I'll actually ungroup that so I just have a basic floor to work with. And at this point, I want to take a completely different project and load it in as a group into this open project. I'm going to go to this project, which is another completely separate project that I have open. And what I want to do now is go to Architecture, Model Group, and Load as Group into Projects. So I've just got Project 1, which is what I'm working with for this video. It's called Project 1. What do I want to do? I want to load into that project. And it's asking me, do I want the attached details? Yeah, I mean, if I've attached details, I'd like them to go because they're part of the group in this case. And do I want the levels and grids to go? I can include those as well. Because I have my own levels and grids set up in my new project, probably, I don't want them to go. I just want the content from this Revit project now a Revit group. And I'll hit OK. And it's got a bunch, it's telling me that it's a huge file and all this. That's fine. It's for the purposes of this video, this is fine. I wouldn't necessarily do this, but just to show you as far as scale, this can work. I'll hit OK. It will take a minute because it's pasting all of those elements. And like it said before, it's a pretty big file. Here we go. So now I'm back in my original project, just a basic project. And when I go to Model Group, I will place Model Group. And I'll see right here, I've got that sample project. And it's the project itself. So I can click that and I'm going to place this. And it's going to be the entire project. Now, there are a few instances where I would use this if I have something specific in a project. Maybe you delete things and leave only what you want, or maybe for some reason you need every element in the project and you want to bring it in instead of a link, but as a group. You could do it that way. This is not a link, it's a group. It's going to be embedded, it's going to be a part of this project. It's going to show up in the model groups in the project browser at the bottom. This is taking forever because there's so many elements to it. Not only was there that one floor plan, but I've got these 4 different options. Once it's done placing, it will act like every other model group that I have in a project. It's all the same. I can copy them around, they'll do the same thing. And now I have this entire project in my now new project, but as a model group, and it would function like any other group. I can again go up here and place the group, and I can place this group wherever I want. Because it's so big, I may not need to do that. I might just be using this as a reference. You can, at this point, do whatever you want to it because it's now a group. It's in your project. You don't have to worry about it. So that's great. I can't say I use this tool, that part of model groups, all that much, just because of what it is. I don't necessarily need to pull in another project. If I'm pulling in an entire separate project, I'm probably using a link. I'm going to cover links in another video at a different time, but I don't necessarily use this a lot, especially for a full building. It might be specific instances where you want to use that, but I just wanted to cover it for the sake of this video. So I'm going to delete this now. I don't necessarily need it. But what I want to do now is go to another instance where I might use a model group. So I'm going to draw a wall. It doesn't matter, just give me a generic wall. I'm going to draw it on the edge here. I'll use the finish face exterior, just so it shows up on the edge there. And I want this to go all the way up to level 10 in this case. So when I go to 3D, I've got this giant wall right there. Okay. So a lot of times you're gonna use curtain walls, and they may span the entire length of the full building. That's great. But they may be broken up into certain modules. Maybe it's a 30 by 30 module, a 15 by 15, 60 by 60, whatever it might be. You're likely using different kinds of modules. So what I can do now is I can go to wall and then curtain wall. I'm going to place a curtain wall. And I'm going to go back to level 1 actually. And I'm going to place this just here, right there. And as soon as I do that, I don't see it. Now what I need to do at this point is I can go to cut and I can select that wall and then cut out the curtain wall. And now I can see my curtain wall right there. It's perfect. So like I said before, let's make this 30 feet. Move it in and I'll make it 30 feet high, so it's a working module or something like that. So I've got this 30 by 30 foot curtain wall. At this point, let's go ahead and add some grid lines. I'll add some grids here, there, and there. And we'll split it up vertically as well, the same way. And now I'll go to mullion, and I'm gonna go to all grid lines, and I'll just choose, yeah, that's a basic mullion, that's fine. I'll select that, and now I've got all the mullions and all the grid lines, panels, everything that I need for this particular curtain wall. It's perfect. It's my module in this case. So what we'll want to do now is I can create just a group from this. So let's call this, I'll do curtain wall module. Call it curtain wall module. So at this point, it's now a group. To edit anything here, I would need to go into the group. But what I want to do now is just place this around. So maybe I've got 35 feet. Every 35 feet is the same module. Every 35 feet. Just like that. And again, we'll cut these out. I'll go to cut. I'll choose this master wall, and then I'll cut these out. I can use multiple cut over here to continue cutting like that, and like that. So I've got all those different curtain walls cut out of the main wall. And again, you can see that they're nicely associated to level 1. And what I want to do maybe now is associate them to level 2. We probably need the same thing. So in this case, I'm actually going to copy them up. I'll just go to this front view in 3D, and I'll just copy them up. I'll unclick constrain, and I'll do 35 feet higher so we have the same module, just like that. I would be careful when you do that, just because when I select this group, if I can select the group, I can see that the reference level is 5. Now, 5, I'm not exactly sure where it's getting at. In this case, maybe it's 5. Maybe it should be 5, maybe not. See, level 5 is right there. That's something to be aware of. So, unfortunately, you're going to have to leave it associated to some sort of level. In this case, I just moved it up myself and it works. It will continue to work in this case because it's so simple. Again, I like to use model groups with just one element in them because it makes things so much easier. There's not really anything that can go wrong besides you're just dealing with that one element. So now what I've got to do is, again, cut out these different curtain walls from that master wall. I will select the wall and continue to cut them out. Just like this, you'll have to unfortunately select the edge of all the curtain walls, like that and there. So now I've got them all cut out. And the reason that I want to do something like this is if it's spanning the entire length of the building, maybe it's the whole facade or the whole building, it's wrapping around the entire building, this same module. Maybe what I want to do is edit that quickly. Instead of having to change every single one, maybe you have it all as one giant curtain wall. That can work, but it can get crazy and time consuming to edit everything you need to if some design change occurs. So what I want to do now is go into the group, and I don't need to do anything crazy to show this off, but maybe I need to make room for a spandrel that shows up here. So I can make this 3 feet, and then as soon as I click accept, you can see that every different group, and all of these being different instances of the same group, are edited and updated at the same time just because it's a group. That's how the groups work. It's really helpful to do something like that, and it's really nice. So that's another instance of where I would definitely use model groups because it's just that single element. It's real quick to update, and it updates everything across your entire facade in this case. So that's perfect. I'm going to delete this because we don't want it anymore. I'll get rid of these groups, and I'll show off one final thing. So I'm going to make just some walls that are on level 1. Let's go ahead and put some doors in there, because maybe this is just some sort of typical unit. I'll go back to level 1 so this is a little easier. And of course I made a bunch of curtain walls. Let's make a real wall. We'll turn them all into just generic walls. We'll put some more generic walls in here. That's all we need. And now I'll put some doors. So like I said, maybe this is a typical unit you have, and you've got different elements that fall within this group, which in this case it's a unit. So maybe you have a bedroom and all this, whatever, one full unit in a residential tower, for instance. I can place different elements here. Again, I'm just doing this so I'm filling and adding elements to this model group. What I want to do now is I want to make this entire thing a model group. I'll hit model group and I'll call this unit, and let's just call it unit A. So this is unit A, perfect. What I can do now is determine the origin, because maybe this is going to be a corner unit, for example. So I'll take this origin point for this model group, and let's make that this exterior corner right there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add thicker walls to the edge of all of these walls here at the corner to give you an idea of how this might work. And I want to use the finished face exterior just so it's on the edge there, like that and like that. So I want to take this model group by the origin there. I'm actually going to rotate this 180 degrees. And I will go ahead and move that origin point down to this bottom left. And now I'm going to move this model group using that origin point down here to the bottom. So now I've got a corner unit, and I've got all these interior partition walls that butt up to these, I guess you'd call it exterior structural walls in this case. So I've got this corner unit. And what I want to do now is I want to make this a link. So I can convert this model group into a link. And you might ask, like, why would you do that? What's the point? Well, the point of making, in this case, like a unit group as a link is I can create a link from this, so someone else can go work in the unit model and I can work in the main master model of this residential tower and continue to work. We're not going to be tripping over each other, but at the same time, because it's a link and not a group, you don't have to worry about anything breaking or becoming disassociated or having joining problems. That they're completely separate Revit models, Revit projects. There's really nothing you have to worry about besides just making sure links work well and they're in the right place and everything. But there's just not a whole lot to do after that. So again, you can keep them as groups if you want. What I can do, I'll go to 3D and imagine this wall continues up, but I'm going to copy this unit up. I'm going to actually edit the walls and make sure that they just span to one level. I'll select just the walls. I will connect that to level 2. I'll hit OK. And same with these walls. I'll just make them go up to level 2. And I'm going to copy this model group up all the way up the building. Why not? So I've got this same model group copied of the building. And this is a great reason why you'd want to use model groups, because as soon as I edit one on one level, I get the same thing on, in this case, every corner unit of every level. That's perfect. But I'm going to undo that. But like I said before, the model groups can break. They become unreliable, and if they get to the point where they're constantly breaking, you can't keep up with them, it's just a mess. So one way around that in the beginning is to instead create a link from this model group. So I'm going to go up here after selecting the model group, select link, and I've got a couple options here. And it's asking me how I want to convert this group. I can replace with a new project file, or I can replace with an existing project file. So I don't typically want to replace with an existing file because I'm not trying to overwrite anything. So what I'll do now is just replace with a new project file, and I'm literally prompted to make a new project at this point. And like I called it before, I'm going to call it Unit A. Right there, if I can type. And I can see that it's working because the group to save is Model Group Unit A. And I can include the attached detail groups or not, it's not a big deal. But I'm going to save them in a particular folder. I'll hit save, and after I do that, everything is automatically converted into a link, and that's perfect. So I'm getting some weird looking errors here because if you remember, the floors went with it. Those walls are associated to the floor because they were associated to the floor. The floors went with the link in this case. So I've got this link in here. And you can see it's a link because as soon as I click on it, I can see linked Revit model unit A. I can also go to the Manage tab and then Manage Links and see Unit A right there. It's a Revit file, it's linked in, and I know it's working. But if you remember how I was not advising using model groups because of the associations that it has, and make sure you have all the elements that you need. Well, because the walls were hosted to the floor in a sense went with it. If that makes sense. When I created the link, these floors went with it. What I can do now is I can go to manage links, and I'm going to unload this so I can go into the model itself and edit it. I'm going to go to open now, and you can see I have the full file here. I'll hit open, and it'll open this file, and you can see there's the floor. I don't want the floor, so I'm going to delete the floor. And in this case, I don't even really need level 2 because it's just one level, and that's something to be aware. If it's just one unit spanning one level, I don't even need level 2, and I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm going to hit OK. I only have level 1. That's perfect. All these walls are going up to an unconnected height of 10 feet, that's fine. That's all it needs to be. So I'm going to save the model, which I just saved it. I'm going to close it, and now I'm going to go into Manage Links, and I'll reload this. I'll hit reload, I'll hit OK, and now I get everything back. And that's exactly what I might want to do for this instance. And just like before, I can copy this link, and I can align the selected levels, copy it all the way up the building, and it works just the same. Now what you want to do in this case is go into the model, and just to show this, I will unload this again. I'll hit OK. I'm going to open this one more time. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to add this level to a particular work set. And because this is not a work shared file or whatever, I don't have that option. So that's just something to be aware of. What you can do after you've made this a work sharing file, you can add this level to a new work set, and you can close this work set in this project. Then you can close the project after saving it, and once you reload it in, you will no longer see that level. And the reason I do see these levels show up is because I haven't made it a work sharing file, and I have not closed the work set that these levels are on. That doesn't necessarily matter for this case, but you could see where you might want to use a link versus a model group. It can be kind of hairy, but all in all, I kind of like links a lot more because they're not going to break. They're standalone. They're their own thing. You can have this a million different times. It doesn't matter. It's just a single instance, so it's not gonna bog down your model as badly. Now, if your links are gigantic and huge, that's a different story. But if you have all of these different model groups throughout the entire building, it's just absolutely everywhere, that could bog down your model for sure. Whereas if you just have 4 different links of 4 different units, it's not so bad. It's like having them all loaded in once. It's just in one place. So there's not a whole lot to worry about. So I sure hope you learned something about this video. This is a little more advanced into model groups, looking at links and loading in a project as a group itself. If you did enjoy this and learn something, please demolish that like button. It really helps. Please demolish it. Also subscribe. That really helps too. I appreciate all the feedback that you might have. And I sure hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.